Now, President Trump and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer just had their own press conference announcing a new technology partnership to deepen ties on artificial intelligence and digital assets. Let's take a listen in on what they said on this tech prosperity deal.
We're committed to ensuring that the UK has a secure and reliable supply of the best AI hardware and software on Earth. And we supply that, and we'll make sure we supply it in quantity to the UK. And we also are joining forces on quantum computing and nuclear power, a natural partnership for close allies.
This tech partnership has the power to change lives. It's our chance to ensure that technologies like AI, quantum, and others amplify human potential, solve problems, cure diseases, make us richer and freer.
Let's parse through today's announcement from the president and the prime minister. For that, I'm joined by Lori Wallach. She's director of Rethink Trade, a program at American Economic Liberties Project. We're also joined by Bloomberg opinion columnist Parmi Olson. She is the author of Supremacy, AI, ChatGPT, and the Race That Will Change the World. Parmi, let me kick it off with you. What do you expect from this partnership in particular? Because we've heard about NVIDIA investing in the UK as well. Does the closeness of the U.S. and the UK, President Trump and Keir Starmer, mean that American businesses are going to invest more in Great Britain than they will in other countries?
Well, I think you have to ask yourself why these tech announcements are happening as part of a Trump delegation. And absolutely, I think this is part of an effort to create political goodwill between tech companies and the UK government. When we think about regulation against tech, this wasn't of tech. This wasn't an issue that was brought up by Keir Starmer or in any of these press conferences. But underneath all of that, I think is a real effort, a kind of diplomatic effort, if you will, to try and create some goodwill, bearing in mind that the UK is seen as a kind of light touch regulation when it comes to tech versus the European Union. And what it means for Britain in terms of building out data centers and infrastructure, certainly that creates a lot of opportunity. But the UK is still well behind the US when it comes to supercomputing for AI capacity. The US has something like 75% of all AI supercomputing capacity, well ahead even of China, which is something like 15%. The UK is at like 3%. So the real opportunity for Britain isn't to try and match this infrastructure, but really build on top of it, leverage it, build apps, and really kind of invest in the entrepreneurs that are going to build those services.
Lori, what do you think about that and the idea that we could regulate AI? I mean, how far can you go in what is essentially an arms race between all of the most powerful nations on Earth?
So before addressing that, I want to just note what I think is the most interesting twist of these announcements, which is the government-to-government trade negotiations didn't seem to actually progress at all. The UK was looking for a tariff relief deal with respect to steel and aluminum, not forthcoming. There were other issues that were actual trade, government-to-government deals that were being discussed. That did not move. So what we see here is pledges being politically announced by leaders of countries, but really relying on private sector companies to follow through on things that they find in their own best interest or not, depending on what goes forward. I think Parmi's point is right on as far as what the dynamics and the balance there is in the UK and the US role. I guess one of the questions is there some attempt to be leveraging having more of this investment there as a way to lobby against things like the UK digital services tax, which President Trump has oft said is discriminatory, a trade violation. And as a recovering trade attorney, I just want to say that is wrong. That is not a tax that is written to attack U.S. companies because they are from the U.S. There's no nationality-based discrimination. Rather, like most tax policies, they are titrated according to the size and dominance of the company. And so it's not that these companies that are paying that tax are American, but rather they are very large, and that is why they are paying that tax. And
well, I mean, the president doesn't care really why they're paying the tax. He's just trying to get American companies off the hook from having to pay that tax in order to increase our competitiveness, isn't he?
You can have a bullying strategy to do that for sure, and we've seen the president do that. As a matter of trade law, there are very deep rules called non-discrimination. And the claim that both industry and the U.S. government's been making is there's a trade violation here. Right. There is no trade violation.
Well,
you can bully, though.
It does seem like a whole raft of laws are going to get reworked in this administration and by this president and this Supreme Court. Parmi, I want to ask your take on the regulation aspect, because I think Jeffrey Hinton said he thinks there's a 10 to 20% chance that AI drives all of us to extinction in the next 20 years. And as we focus so much on investing as much as we can and building the biggest possible data centers everywhere, is it likely that we regulate this technology?
No, we have to. Right now, we're in that same predicament where we were with social media, where companies who are building these incredibly influential systems and potentially harmful systems are self-regulating. And that didn't work out so great for society in many respects, mental health of a lot of young people with social media. And so the same thing's happening where I think AI companies are trying to put in certain safeguards. They say that they are, having their models, for example, audited by certain standards and testing institutes. But none of that is actually legally obligatory to them. So there needs to be some kind of regulation. The European Union has the AI Act, which is this kind of sweeping attempt to comprehensively oversee how AI is developed safely. I would love to see the UK come out with some kind of AI legislation, because as I mentioned earlier, Britain's a bit more of a light touch, and Britain does tech regulation very, very sensibly, as it did with the Online Safety Act, data protection for children. That legislation was copied by several U.S. states because it does a good job of not going a little bit too far in kind of infringing on people's privacy. They tend to be quite reasonable and quick. So I would love to see that. And I think it's interesting here in Europe, there's a lot of debate on whether, regulation is holding back innovation in this region, holding back entrepreneurs in Britain. But I don't think that's the case at all. That's a total red herring. A lot of it is spin from big tech companies who don't want to have their business models disrupted. The real issue here is spending on startups by venture capital funds. They're not getting the money they need from domestic pension funds. They're way too cautious on this side of the pond. I worry actually a little bit that some of these headline grabbing numbers that we're talking about today with the Trump visit on infrastructure and data is sort of distracting us from what the UK really needs to do, which is just really step up that spending on startups here who want to grow bigger, because they're just struggling to get that money.
All right. Unfortunately, I have to wrap this up because we're out of time. But Lori, I want to have you back on because I don't want to be dismissive of what current trade law is, but we see the Supreme Court siding with the president time and time again when it comes to laws that he has allegedly broken, constitutional law that we would have thought will go the other way. So I hope you can come back and join us. Lori Wallach there, director of Rethink Trade, and Bloomberg opinion columnist Parmi Olson. Thank you as well.